following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, this is Carl Seidel, and welcome to The People's View. The People's View is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee, and if you want to find out more about what we do, go to our website, nashuagop.org. We meet the second Thursday of every month, except in July and August, and we have an affair coming up in August, on August 16th. So please come and see our guest speaker, Alan West. And now we'll go to meet our guest for today, Mayor Lozeau, Mayor of Nashua. Thank you very much for being on, Mayor.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your support of public access as we enter our third year here on Public Access TV.
Of course, you're welcome.
And we like to know a little bit more about you. I know this weekend was a little busy one for you with getting your son married and hosting everybody. But how do you work all that in with all your things that you're doing with the mayor's job?
Well, you always make sure family comes first.
Okay.
And then you do your job.
Good.
And sometimes the two bump into each other, but I think with
you were able
planning,
to get a few days.
Right. It was important for me to be at the wedding.
I think so.
It was important to be mom. It was a great weekend. I was very grateful to have it and happy that the weather played around our schedule pretty nicely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was a relief.
How about that? Somebody was praying, I understand.
My mom. She sure did.
Okay. Well, the job as being mayor has a number of different aspects to it. I mean, just today you had a little emergency meeting because of the rain and the floods and everything. So that's all solved. What other things are on your platter that you'd like to talk about today?
Well, you know, as we've talked about before, we just got the budget done. That happened last week, just in time for me to focus on the wedding. So we passed the board on Tuesday, and so the wedding was Saturday.
Changes.
So, well, there was about $33,000 in cuts. And you know, some people will tell you it's not enough, and some people will tell you it's too much. And you know,
it's fairly small, though. I mean, I'm not saying one way or another, but it was. It means they actually took what you wanted, what you presented to them.
Well, you know, I think that one of the reasons that a majority of the board has always been supportive of budgets is because the budget process, from my perspective, is listening to your colleagues throughout the year. You know, what are the things that they're talking about? What are the struggles that we're sharing in? You know, what are the concerns that they have about not enough spending here or too much spending there, or what are those balances? What are the things that we've agreed to throughout the year that we're going to take care of? And so a lot of that plays into the budget that I create. So I try very hard to communicate with them the challenges that we'll have for the year. So for instance, this year, as you recall, the state stopped paying anything now towards pension costs. So the state went from 35% to 0. In addition, the retirement board this year passed an increase onto the employer of 26%. So that was a $3.7 million impact to the budget.
That was a big
and that's
chunk.
a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so that all by itself can really be destructive in many ways, including you have to stay under the city spending cap. We're in the middle of new negotiations starting up. We have some contracts still that have expired. They just started the teacher contract again, so you have to put aside contingency money for that. Those two things alone will get you to the spending cap. So you really have to look at cuts and changes and things like that. And you know, we've been pretty successful with that. I think that the majority of the board, because they understand the struggles and the loss of revenues over the years. I mean, you know, my first budget, we had great revenues. The second, you know, in that year, taxes increased 0.08%. You know, and there were a lot of things done that year. You remember that was the year of the teacher contract and some of those things. But since then, we've lost, over $20 million, both on local and state revenue, and that has an impact. And now every $1.8 million is 1% on the city tax rate. And so, balancing that, being under the spending cap, all those things happening. So I think that a lot of the aldermen see that their concerns are being addressed, see that the investments are good. I mean, look at, here we are in the middle of, all of this bad economic times, yet we got a AAA rating from the National Rating Agency, which made a huge difference on our
Interest
bonds
rates
and things like that. So when you look at all those things, I think overall, I think people feel pretty good about what we're doing.
Well, how much is it due to decreased valuation because of the real estate problems? I mean, how much of the income did you lose because of that?
Well, actually, when I started as mayor, the city was assessed at $9.5 billion in assessed property value. I mean, that's pretty significant. Today, we're at 8.4. But to be fair, when we do the revaluation, which we're going to be doing again this year, and we did it, I want to say my second year, my second budget. Actually, I know for certain it was, because the first year, I try to remember these things because they're important and to be able to talk to taxpayers about them. But as I said, in the first year, it was under 1%. The second year was a revaluation. And so everybody, 75% paid the same or less as they had been paying. And so what really happens is, so when people talk about the tax rate, maybe it's $15 a thousand today, but then the revaluation happens and it changes to 20. You didn't go up that much. Somebody's not paying $5 more per thousand on their house. That's not how it works. It really is, you just bring it back up to where it should. So when you look at what did I pay last year and what did I pay this year, you do that percentage on what you actually paid. And that's when you see the real number of what happens. So this year we'll be doing a revaluation again. We're not exactly certain what will happen, but I would imagine that some of the homes, again, the residential will probably go down a bit. Commercial maybe not down as low as you'll see some of the residential go. It's not, some people will say, I just as soon, have my valuation go down and pay less in taxes, which inevitably they'll probably pay some less. But others say, I'd like my value of my house to stay. So it's really kind of a catch-22, and you really don't know how it's going to play out and what the comps are. But we're seeing the revenues change. We're seeing increase in motor vehicles, some of our larger revenue sources, and so that's helpful. But we haven't lost tax dollars the way you asked the question. I just want to make sure people understand that. We haven't collected less in property taxes.
But you're getting a greater value out of some of the new developments that are going up, not only the residential, but the commercial.
Right,
I mean,
that will happen.
Off Spitbrook Parkway is going to
Exactly,
be quite
Technology Park and the new homes that are going up there. We will see that, and as the Parkway, Broad Street Parkway gets developed, we'll see redevelopment along that, that corridor. So, I think that we'll see many things change, and we have to deal with whatever is happening at that time, at the same time planning for what's to come.
Well, you have a number of things that are new, the Broad Street Parkway, what you're doing in downtown Nashua and everything. The sidewalk question came up here.
Did it?
And I was just wondering how is that going? Is that, it looks nice.
Thank you. It's actually going really well.
Is it?
We tried to develop a website. So if you go to the city's homepage, there's a little icon to the left that says Main Street Project. And on that, we've put a video that we've done to walk people through the project and what went into the decisions that were made and how long we've been looking at it. And then we also put the budget up there. We put the video from the public meeting that I had with the Board of Aldermen and the Board of Public Works and members of the public that came and asked questions. That was a meeting that was almost a couple of hours. We've put that video up. And we're trying to really make people aware as we can. We have found the old history of what happened from 1977 to 1984. That's how long the project took the last time they did it.
Oh, really?
Exactly.
I wasn't around here then.
Well,
but,
I was. I won't tell you where I was exactly. But when they did that project 30 years ago, very different approach and a very different project.
That'd be interesting.
Well, and we don't have, from that time when that project was done, and they did it with an outside contractor, They didn't actually put together what we call as-built drawings. So that would have been helpful to have for this project. But we are taking the approach, and there's certainly been a lot of discussion about, did you go out to bid, or why didn't you go out to bid, and why isn't it contractors, and why is it your staff? And the Board of Public Works really looked at these things. So back in 2010, there was a downtown committee that had been established by the Board of Aldermen that was looking at this. And they got an estimate at that time from an engineering company about replacing the sidewalks. Now, the difference has been that this project from the very beginning, from our perspective, different than that committee that was looking at it. That committee's looking at it saying, you know, the bricks are a problem, the trees are a problem, everything's, you know, I mean, anybody that's walked downtown can't honestly say that there's not a problem.
I've tripped over a few things.
Of course. I mean, we've had people taken out by ambulance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very,
Oh, boy.
it's very hard. But, so people look at kind of the cosmetics of that. But we wanted to look at the project soup to nuts. We wanted to say, okay, not only are we going to try to make it look good, we're going to make a solid foundation. So, for instance, 30 years ago, when they came across a bulkhead in the ground, you know, those old working bulkheads that you'd open up, you know, with the iron doors, they actually took that out where the owner didn't want it anymore. And they just put 2x4s in and put plywood in. Well, in 30 years, those are rotting through. I mean, we've actually had sinkholes on the sidewalk where we've had to go in and repair them. We have buildings that have vaults out under the ground. We have tree roots and pictures of it where tree roots have actually destroyed storm drains full of roots, around gas piping, around conduit, you know, heading towards buildings in different places, into some of the vaults. And so, well, you'd like to think that you could keep the trees. I mean, you know, you're an elected official. You understand what happens, right? Why would you want to take that on if you didn't have to?
Yeah.
But, you know, every tip down, we've had drainage problems. So we've really taken a comprehensive approach to this of fixing the drainage, replacing the storm drain where I've talked about tree roots going in, piping the culverts that we've come across, rewiring and rebuilding the conduit, taking the trees out, and this time putting in 6 foot wide, 6 foot deep concrete root barrels and irrigation for all the trees, so that we're going to pull the roots away from some of those areas and manage that better, so that when the day comes, I don't know, 15 years from now, let's just pick a number, and a tree dies or gets struck by lightning or whatever might happen, disease, you can take that tree out of that root barrel without disrupting the sidewalk and plant a new tree. Those are some of the things, you know, some of our green space is going to be rain gardens. So we're really,
that's nice.
Really
is
trying to
this
be
all part of
comprehensive.
the branding, the rebranding of Nashua?
No, actually it isn't. It just happens to be happening at the same time.
Okay.
This is really about safety and walkability in downtown.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's also going to attract, hopefully, new merchants down there, and as you fix up the river with all the river walk and everything.
Right.
You thinking of San Antonio? Then their river
No, but we're
walk?
thinking about, you know, I mean, I've had people that say to me, I don't know why you're putting money into downtown and the merchants should pay for it. But, you know, the downtown is the heart and soul of a community.
It is.
If you're going to bring a business here or you're going to move here, I bet you when you looked at coming to Nashua, you must have taken a trip downtown, walked the sidewalks, looked around, saw what was here. That's what you see in a community. You follow Main Street from one end to the other, you're going to find a university at one end, and you're going to find a remarkable park at the other.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
so if you just drive Main Street,
Yeah.
you could really capture the essence of our city just on that drive or walk. And so we have to make it safe. We have to make it a gathering place for people. We have to make it a place where people want to be. I mean, that plays right back into the budget, frankly, because if we would have made different decisions or drastic cuts like other communities have had to do, if Nashua wasn't a strong community, and it's strong not just because of the things that, you know, the group that I've been working with, my colleagues on the Board of Aldermen and myself, but even before some of us, decisions that have been made for a long time to set the course for a strong financial base for this city. If I'm a company and I want to come here, or if I'm a company and I want to stay here, if I see headlines where you're laying off 100 people in the schools, or you're laying off police officers, or, you know, I'm going to think, geez, my employee's going to want to live there. And if we don't have that economic base, that strong, diverse economic base that we have right now in the city, taxpayers are going to pick up more of the burden.
And you want to grow that base.
Exactly.
And that's
That's
what's
exactly
attracting. This
correct.
is what you're doing. Because that's always been my theme when I was up in Concord, too. We don't want to raise taxes. We want to grow the base. And we want to make it more enjoyable for people not only to live here, but to work here.
Right, so we create the environment, right? At the State House, you know, you don't create jobs. You create an environment that's conducive to jobs and for companies to want to be here. And this is New Hampshire, not Massachusetts. We can't write checks for people or waive fees, or right? So we have to do the extra work to make it a place where they want to be, where they say, you know, my employees want their kids to go to school here. You know, I mean, we have great things in this community.
So tell us a little bit more about the branding effort that you're going on with this Chamber of Commerce, I guess. And,
right, it's really a great public-private partnership where the city has paid half and the Chamber of Commerce has paid half. And the goal is to come up with a brand that will be able to be used both by business, nonprofit, and the city to give people almost a snapshot of what do we have to offer here in Nashua. And we don't, I mean, certainly we have the city seal. I have a little logo that I've played with on my stationery about the Gate City, which is just something a little different. Mayor Streeter used to have the cupola of City Hall on his. But we don't really have a brand, an icon, a logo type of thing for the city. And so that effort has been ongoing for just about a year now, I think, by the time they hired somebody and got them on board. And there's an advisory committee that's made up of, you know, community business folks, our chairman of our Planning and Economic Development Committee for the Board of Aldermen, and the Chamber President, and my Economic Development Director. There's a whole group of people that have been working on this and vetting what's coming, and the Leadership Greater Nashua class got involved, and so we're waiting to see what will happen. I think you'll see it in the next month or two.
Oh, really?
It'll come out, and we'll see how people respond.
So we should look forward to the fall here and see what's going to be for Nashua.
You know, you want to be careful because you don't want to do it at a time when people aren't paying attention because summer's here, but you don't want to wait so long because people, I think, feel they've waited long enough and are anxious about it.
I think they are. I think that people want to know what's going to happen.
So hopefully we'll have a launch party and people will see it, and we'll see where we go.
Okay. And is the railroad extension a little bit of a part of that? I was wondering about that.
Is it part of the brand?
Well, no, part of developing the Nashua.
Certainly.
The vision of Nashua.
Certainly.
I know you were working independent of what the state is doing to try to get the MBTA to come up at least to Pheasant Lane Mall. How's that covered?
Well, you know, we're still working on it. I still think it's a solid, credible idea to look at an exit 36 South and to have that be a multimodal facility. I have some good feelings about how that might happen, and I think it may very well happen. And we also, you know, we've purchased Crown Street because, you know, I think, you know, people can talk a lot about the train going all the way to Concord, and I'm really not in a position to say whether it's a good or a bad idea. I'm happy to support other communities that would like it. But certainly, I believe it should come to Nashua. We have a lot of businesses, the Technology Park and others that say if we could just get the train here, because that corridor of engineers, you know, between Bedford and Nashua is, you know, very compelling. And to be able to move people around, not just for work, but also for entertainment purposes, I think would be very important. But I think likely New Hampshire will be well served for it to go to the airport. So if it went to the Manchester airport and the Boston airport and, you know, that kind of thing, and it was also included, you know, bus and other things, multiple opportunities, I think that that would be very important. So I didn't want to end up with a train station down at exit 36 South, which you and I both know is not really Nashua. Although, right, because I mean, a significant portion of the parking at Pheasant Lane Mall is in Massachusetts, right? So the train would come to Tingsboro, in essence, if we build that exit, and then have it go to the Manchester airport and not stop in Nashua.
In between.
That's not okay. So we, you know, having another potential location here and its impact on the downtown would be pretty remarkable.
Well, I think my personal opinion is the stepwise approach is better. You learn things as you go to step one, which you can help do step two instead of trying to do step 1, 2, and 3 right at the same time.
I agree. I wouldn't disagree that it makes some sense to look at it, especially the operating costs.
Well, yeah, and the track, you know, the track is going through Nashua. It's a little wavy. It's
it could use some attention.
Yeah, so you don't want to have them going 10 miles an hour either. You want them to go a little bit faster than that.
Well, I had a great meeting with Pan Am.
Oh, yeah.
And Mr. Fink, and he came in, showed me what they've done to date and what they hope to accomplish. And I'm hoping it's a new day for us to
So
find a
they're
way to
looking
work well
through
together.
a lot of freight too then? going
Right,
through here.
they've been doing freight.
Yeah.
I'd like more, and I think they'd like more.
Yeah.
And so I bring up the freight discussion often, and he actually called me because he was concerned that I was leaving the impression that freight
Just
wasn't
passing,
part of the
right.
discussion. And he wanted people to know that even though the rail may not be ready for commuter, it is conducting freight business. And so that's a fair thing. So I told him I would pay closer attention to how I characterized it, because yes, he is doing that. But boy, would I like a lot more, particularly for our businesses in this
Yeah,
community.
yeah. Well, they might have a big trucking depot someplace in the north end.
Well, now be careful. I get into enough trouble on my own. Don't help me.
Well, they have that property up there that they would try to develop, and I was just wondering if that's what was in your mind. That,
No, I don't think so. I think if you look at how Nashua lays out, I mean, even the Broad Street Parkway, it's going to follow the rail bed. So a lot of the businesses on Amherst Street are backed up to the rail bed.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. And so if there's a way, I mean, maybe not today, maybe not 5 years from now, maybe it's 20 years from now, when people say, boy, it makes sense to use these rails. I mean, sometimes, change is inevitable, but sometimes you do get it right the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, the rail, starting way back when, I think it will always be a method of solid transportation throughout our country and others.
Well, the only thing that the objection I had mainly with the plan that came up in front of the house up in Concord was that they want to do high speed. And I just thought high speed is, first of all, it's only, 10, 15 miles, 20 miles between different locations. You don't get up to high speeds between those. You do it if you have 100 miles. But, if you go past Concord, maybe that's realistic. But, you're going to do 50 miles at best on
So
some of
you're
these things.
thinking, you're equating that to somebody driving down Amherst Street going 55 but having to come to a stop every time, right?
Sort of. That's another.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not well versed enough to be able
Okay.
to talk about high speed versus, but I think commuter and freight
Yeah.
are very important for
Yeah,
us.
no, I agree with that.
Looking ahead, and then of course, we do have to answer the question about the operating costs and how those will be paid for in a way
Right.
that is not burdensome. So.
And the roads, we're talking about that, and contrary with that, we support the roads. What do you think about what might be necessary to build up money for supporting, building the roads up again?
Well,
Because
we
that's an
certainly,
important part
as
of
you know,
transportation.
infrastructure is a big problem.
Right.
And it continues to be a problem. I mean, Nashua, again, I think we're better off than a lot of communities, but, we have 765 lane miles. When you think about that,
That's a
just,
lot.
it's huge.
Yeah.
That's like driving from Nashua to Georgia,
Yeah.
one way. So, I mean, that's a lot. And we have people who will tell you, and rightly so, that their neighborhoods have not been paved for 30 years. And we don't have a good program in place that can get us to where we need to be. So for such a long time, we do what we can year after year. And as the cost of gas goes up, the petroleum product known as
Goes up.
asphalt goes up. And so even though you're putting the same or more money in,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily
Not
getting
gaining
more road.
anything, yeah.
So one of the things that I've been talking about for the last few years that I'm hopeful we're going to be able to take care of this year is coming up with a plan for the city overall of how do we get our roads up to speed and then how do we maintain that. And at $1 million or $1.5 million a year, we're not doing as much as we need to. And we do have neighborhoods that have problems, and we concentrate on the biggest benefit value. So, a West Hollis Street or a Main Street will get paved before, a Dora Street,
based on
so-
traffic. yeah.
Right, and so, but, when you're somebody living in the community and you hit that same spot in your road that makes you crazy day after day, and then you land on another road in your neighborhood that just got paved. You want answers, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to get that right until we have a comprehensive plan for how do we attack it.
Well, you trying to do anything with the state too? Because I know, I bet you next session is going to be a lot of discussion on infrastructure and how do we afford to improve infrastructure.
Well, I think, you know, the governor had appointed me to the transition team on transportation. And one of the things that I brought to the table was I thought we should have a discussion about areas when the state comes through and paves some state road responsibilities. Like, for instance, a year or two ago, they came through and they did all the off and on ramps.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, boy, if we could piggyback onto their contract, and while they're paving, let's say, exit 6,
sure.
you know, they could pave Broad Street up to the Hollis line and then come back and do the on-ramp, right? And what might that cost us? And is there a way to save some
Tie it
dollars?
together. Sure.
And the state is willing to look at that,
Good.
which I think will might be helpful. I do support an increase in the gas tax because, you know, we haven't done it since
Well, you
the
need
80s,
something. That's
right?
true,
Wasn't it
yeah.
like 88 or? I don't
I
know.
thought it was 92, but whatever.
Okay, so
yeah.
late 80s, early 90s, whichever it is. I mean, more than a dozen years,
Yeah.
if you're right. And so we're behind. And for Nashua in particular, you know, I ask people, next time you drive from Nashua to any community in Massachusetts, any of the border communities, you look, and you actually often find that you can get gas cheaper in some of those border communities than you can in Nashua, because the supplier
Has cut the price.
is already rolling in that tax and competing.
Yeah.
So we're missing out on money
Mm-hmm.
because they're not going to just slap that on the top. I mean, you know, so whether it's, you know, whoever down the road, the consumer wins at the end. Because if we're competitive with Tingsboro's prices and others, it doesn't matter to them, you
So
know.
that's your recommendation as far as getting some large increase in income.
Well, I think that's the
Spread out over
surefire
time.
way to do it
Yeah.
over a period of time. And not necessarily that we should have a higher tax than other communities. I mean, New Hampshire, we're pretty proud of the fact that ours is always generally lower, whether it's a cigarette tax or whatever it might be. And that becomes a draw for us. So that's okay too. But I think we have to face this because you're eventually going to, you know, pay more than you would if you were managing it now. And that's an important thing. And that's when I talk to people about there's spending, there's cutting, and there's investing. And we,
You have to
doing good
invest.
government, have to balance those three in the right way to get the most for your dollars and give the taxpayers back the best service you can give them.
Good, good. You know what? I almost like to end it on that, but I did have a couple other questions.
No problem.
Because that was a nice ending right there. Maybe we'll have to repeat that.
No problem.
Well, how are things? What are the problems that you see coming up for the next year?
For Nashua in particular?
Yeah, for Nashua in particular.
Well, I think, as I said, I think we've got to do something around the paving plan. I think we have to do similar work around our waterways, the Nashua River and the Merrimack and the canals, looking at what's happening there and what we're not doing and finding a good home for a good steward for our waterways. So we're making a little progress there. I'm working on putting a committee together. Certainly have to finish the downtown. I think we're squared away with Pennachuck. I think they're doing a pretty terrific job. We have to finish our build on our wastewater treatment plant. We're under a, you know, we have a consent decree of work that we're doing there. And so that's why you hear us talking about, are the wastewater rates going to increase? I think people confuse them sometimes with water. So wastewater is a very different thing, thank goodness, than water. And so the drinking water, you know, we'll probably see a slight increase this year. I think it's 0.12%, which, as I like to remind people, we told you, under city ownership, you know, you would see less increases than you would under Pennachuck owner.
Are you thinking of combining any of the administrative parts of that, like the billing or anything?
Well,
like
where
some
we
of this?
can, I think that it makes sense to do
Yeah.
some of that, and there are some of those things that we're looking at. You know, it's nice to let them get their legs under them, the new board,
Yeah.
and they're doing a pretty fair job of that. I'm pleased. I have just under a year left for my service on that board, and we really did a good job, myself and the Board of Aldermen, seating that board. I mean, they are people that bring a lot to the table, and I think that the city is certainly benefiting from that, as are the surrounding communities. So, I mean, I think that one's almost like a check off the list, you know. And then I think that we've always got a challenge with the budget, particularly as the state is struggling with the pension plans and the underfunding there and what that means. So I think we've got to do something there. You know, it's funny, I'm a list person, so when I did my State of the City, not this past year, but the year before, and I was ending my first term, I went through, okay, here's all the stuff we did, and here's just, you know, kind of randomly off the top of my head of the things that we need to do. And so I look back at it from time to time to gauge kind of our progress on that. We've got a new playground that we've been talking about for people with disabilities, not just children with disabilities, but some of our soldiers are coming back, and we want to have playgrounds where they can take their children, even though they have challenges, and their children may not. So, you know, we're working on wrapping that up. So there's a lot. We're working on plans and trails around our conservation land. We have 900 acres of conservation land.
You're going to bring all that from, where is it, Hollis into the city, right?
Well, I think the Heritage Rail Trail
yeah,
and a lot of that should be done. Our bike paths, you know, the downtown project, I'd like to get that squared away.
How much of that river do you want to develop? I mean,
Well, the Riverwalk is 1.6 miles. So we'll have, when Cotton Mill Square on Front Street is done their piece, we'll have a portion from there to Main Street to finish. And then whether or not we do another piece next to the senior center, define it a little differently. But if we get that done, we'll pretty much have the Riverwalk ready.
Yeah, San Antonio started from a very small area, and it was part of it was really kind of ragged. I was down there at one time, and now it just kept on going and going and going on both ends of the river.
And look what it does, right?
Oh,
People go there. I mean, Lowell did that around their rivers. You know, Boston did it around Charles. I mean, you should be celebrating. I mean, we're a mill town, so for so many years, a lot of the properties were along the river, and they were using them in a way that we've learned is not very healthy for us. And so now to bring, you know, livable, walkable, safe space where we bring our public down to benefit from all that has to offer, it'll take some time, but I think we'll get it done. You know, the gateways coming into the city are one of my priorities. The work that we're doing on East Hollis Street with a potential traffic circle there, and the housing and the promenade along the Merrimack River. I mean, those are things. We have so many wonderful opportunities. I keep saying, but there's just not enough time. Actually, depending on the kind of boat ramp. So for the Merrimack, it's a different kind of a challenge. For the Nashua River, we just completed a new boat ramp, actually kind of close to the studio here over in Mine Falls at the entrance next to Stellos. So that was completed, it's 2 years now. And that gets a lot of use. And then the plan for the Riverwalk, particularly next to Front Street, downtown, is an area where it's been accepted that on the plan there'll be a place to launch canoes and kayaks at that end of the river, which will be nice. And we have a few places like that where we do some of that. But it would be nice.
I tried canoeing that part of the Nashua River. It needs a little bit of work.
You want to be careful, well, and we have some issues. And of course, in the next few weeks, you're going to see the Crest Gate going in at the Jackson Falls Dam. And that is really going to change the flood zone and things like that and give us a little bit more control with the river. It also, as they're doing that work and they dry up a piece of the river just below the falls, it's a good opportunity to go in and see what we can clean up.
What you might find.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. Well, if we come up with Jimmy Hoffa, well,
there you go.
Well, we might have enough money to do some of the other work we'd like. But no, it's
you'll have enough publicity anyway.
It's certainly interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like you're having fun too.
You know, I love my job. I'm blessed to have it. It's the hardest job I've ever had. I say that all the time. You know, there's kind of two parts to the job. There's the CEO of the $250 million company that is not going to make everybody happy all the time. Right decisions are not always the popular ones.
That's right.
And then there's a part of the job that's the fun part. You know, talking to folks like you, meeting with people, cutting ribbons, you know, celebrating, you know, all the community that has to offer. And that's the people part. You know, I love that. So.
Speaking of people, I had a question asked me to ask you.
Uh-oh.
What happened to the plan of taking care of recycling and in these condo units?
Oh, actually, the Board of Aldermen seated a recycling committee. We were supposed to have our report done April 30th. But with the budget and a lot of other things that were going on, the biggest challenge is getting us all together on a schedule that works. But we've made some progress. The committee is scheduled to meet again this month. I think we'll probably make some recommendations over the next couple of months. I don't see us going into condominiums to pick up, their recycling, but I think that we might have a interesting alternative that we're vetting right now. And hopefully we'll be able to put that out there, and so people can do more recycling.
Now, I know some of the other cities have have a big dumpster there. You don't pick it up regularly, but people put it in the dumpster, and then when it gets full, you take it away.
There's a few different options. So, but the city, typically, we don't pick up trash or anything in condominium developments because you're on private roads. Some of them have issues with size of the truck, area, and then you look at manufactured housing, and then you look at condominiums, two different things, but very similar. Then you have private schools, and so how do we help provide that service? Because we want to encourage recycling and keep it out of our landfill and extend the life. But we also want to be careful that we're not biting off more than we can chew, because we need more staff and more equipment and more, you know what I mean? So how to do that. But I think we've got kind of a unique solution that we all on the committee, I think, are excited about.
Well,
so
we'll be happy to hear it. You can announce it on our program, whatever.
Well, I'm sure members of the recycling committee might be happy to come and talk.
Well, that would be good. We'll have to come and talk to you about aligning it all up.
Well, we do our best work, I think, when we work collectively.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're doing a good job on working that way. You get more bang for your buck.
Thanks. Well, I think it's important because there are things that even on our best day we can't think of. I mean, I sat here because you asked me off the top of my head what's left to be done, and I'm sure I've left off some really big things that somebody's at home going, well, but what about?
Yeah, definitely. You'll get a phone
so,
call tomorrow.
You think of what you can, what's right on your mind at the time, but when you bring a group together and if you seat it right, you've got a group that everybody brings a little something different to the table. There's nothing like that.
Okay. Well, thank you again for this time.
You're welcome.
And thank you, audience, for listening in. And remember that The People's View is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. Go to our website on nashuagop.org and come to our event on August 16th. Thank you again, and thank you.
You're welcome.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.